Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about Wolverine and the X-Men that came out in January of 2009 and ended in November of 2009. It only lasted for a season, and it's the only X-Men series to last just one season. I don't really consider Pride of the X-Men because that didn't even get past like the unaired pilot and everything. But yeah, it's literally like baffling how an X-Men series can only get one season. And it's a pretty good show. It ain't perfect. There are flaws in the series, but it's still pretty good. It was very bold, very ambitious. And perhaps there's more to why it got canceled other than just Disney buying out, Marvel. I still think there are some things that cause people not to quite like this series. It's weird. This series is kind of like almost a forgotten series. You don't hear too many people talk about this series. And when you ask them what's their favorite X-Men series, of course, everybody always says the 90s because X-Men the animated series was just pure gold. It felt like it was ripped straight from the comic and went on to the television series. And I don't know, man, it's just weird. It's like you just don't hear too many people talk about this series. Now, in terms of my ranking, it is probably my fourth favorite X-Men series, but technically it is the least because my last favorite X-Men series is Pride of the X-Men, which, like I said before, didn't even get past the pilot stage. And you have to look it up online just to find the unaired pilot. And so my favorite, of course, is the 90s X-Men animated series. My second favorite is X-Men Evolution. My third, which one I actually forgot about until just now, is actually Marvel's anime X-Men. Not the 90s X-Men anime, because I've never seen that. But I saw the intro, and the intro is better than the 90s American one, which is really hard to top. And then, second to last place is this series, Wolverine and the X-Men. But why is it exactly my fourth favorite X-Men series, or least favorite, and stuff like that? I actually don't own this on DVD, the complete box set that is. I actually own a couple, not all, but a couple of the volumes and stuff. Only because there are just some episodes that just get on my nerves and I feel like they're pointless. One problem with this series is that it had a couple of filler type episodes. Most of those filler episodes is the leading man himself. So let's break it on down. This show was created by none other than Craig Cowell. And Craig Cowell is a name you're probably familiar with. He worked on X-Men Evolution. He was also responsible for a lot of those Marvel animated movies from the early 2000s. Good movies, not all of them are great. Some are pretty good, some are amazing. And he's kind of like the Bruce Timm of Marvel animation, or at least he was. And I'm not sure who helms Marvel animation now, but who's ever doing Marvel animation now, I personally don't like it. Like Marvel Spider-Man, I don't like. Avengers Assemble, I do not like. What was it? Hulk Agents of Smash and the Guardian cartoon series. A lot of stuff that tries to be like the MCU, I just simply don't like. And I just can't get my finger around it, which got me very, very, very worried for the rebooted X-Men 97, which is supposed to continue from the 90s X-Men series. I just don't trust these people at the MCU, and I just don't trust Kevin Feige when it comes to animation. Like that Spider-Man animated series he's supposed to create, the MCU. I'm not even feeling that, not even the animation and stuff. Because I don't even like Marvel What If, the animated series. I just can't get into that and stuff. So I'm really scared that he's about to tackle the 90s X-Men series, which makes you stop and wonder, why didn't he just reboot Wolverine and the X-Men? I mean, it left off on a cliffhanger and only had one season. Like, but he went with the most popular X-Men series, which is of course the 90s. But back to this. So Craig Cowell co-created this along with Greg Johnson. I'm not really too familiar with Greg Johnson, but I do remember his name, and I briefly remember his face. But Craig Cowell, I remember a lot, especially in like interviews and stuff like that. Like I said before, he is the Bruce Timm of like, well, was of Marvel animation and stuff. And I remember when this show was first being constructed, I was watching the DVD on one of those like Marvel animated movies from the early 2000s or mid 2000s, I should say. And like, he was going over the first look of Wolverine and the X-Men. Why exactly did this show come to be? Why is it titled the way it is? Why is Wolverine the leader of the X-Men, which he never is in the comics? Is because of the Fox X-Men series. Wolverine was the standout character in those movies. So Marvel's all like, yo, man, let's cash in on animation. Let's make like Wolverine the leader, which makes no sense. He is literally just like the lone wolf who just like goes about his own business, doesn't really do too much teamwork, and just slashes stuff open. He's full of rage. So why in the world is he a leader? And so like, it's all because of the Hugh Jackman Wolverine. He just like exploded in popularity. So they wanted to cash in on that. And so like, I remember watching that first look thing, and I was just like, man, I can't wait for this series, because it's been a while since X-Men Evolution was on, and the animation looked great. The story was interesting. So this series is basically a mystery, like who done it, like what happened, and there are all these different plots going on. And there's stuff going on in the present day, then there's stuff going on 20 years in the future, because it's a take on Days of Future Past. That's it, with the Sentinels and stuff. And I'm like, cool, man. Those always some cool episodes in the 90s X-Men series with Bishop and stuff like that. So I was all in for this series, man. And then it came out, and I remember like the first 3 episodes were like back to back. And then all of a sudden it went kind of like on a small hiatus. And then they brought it back on. And then it was kind of like on a small hiatus again. So basically, it was, sometimes it would take anywhere between like a month or like a 2-month break. And whenever they would air episodes, they would air anywhere between 2 to like 4 episodes, then take another break and then do it again and blah, blah, blah. And it got to the point where I started to forget about this series when it was on. And one of the things that, like, there are some things that bugged me about this. Like, there's a lot of stuff that bugged me about this series. Because like I said before, it's not my favorite and stuff. It's just, one of the reasons why I don't like this series, like, fully is because of the humor in it. The MCU was starting up. They had only 2 movies out their belt, Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. And we all know Iron Man had a lot of humor in it. And so this series tried to like capitalize on that, while having a lot of characters be very comedic, and characters who aren't necessarily comedic. Like pretty much, like you expect Kitty to be comedic, and you expect Iceman, but you wouldn't expect Beast or Forge or Wolverine himself to be comedic characters. So it was always something that kind of like threw me off. Even Colossus was a little comedic when they had him in that one episode and that one episode only. And I just remember thinking to myself, this is really strange. Like, why is Wolverine making jokes and being sarcastic? And all this other crap. Like, I didn't understand that. But then one of the things that really pisses me off about this series is how they do the X-Men themselves. They're done dirty. A lot of them don't get a lot of screen time. Nobody gets no character development except for Wolverine, of course. And of course, like Cyclops and stuff like that. And Emma Frost, who they introduced. I remember Craig gushing over Emma Frost more than Jean Grey. And so he even made Emma hotter than Jean Grey in this series, which is baffling because Jean has always been drawn like hot. And in this series, she's still attractive, just not as hot as she normally is and not as hot as Emma. And so but the way they do the X-Men in this series is just like baffling at times. There's only a couple who get character development, but everybody is overshadowed by that of Wolverine. It is literally the Wolverine show. And that's another problem I have with this. See, by the third X-Men movie, people were starting to grow tired of Wolverine. He was the main attraction in all three of those movies and the only person who saved the day. Then, of course, X-Men Origin Wolverine was coming out around this time. And by that time and by that movie, everybody was sick and tired of Wolverine. And I truly believe that movie has something to do with the cancellation of this show. It's always been reported that the reason why this show got canceled because one, it aired on Nickelodeon. And by that time, because Fox didn't really have an animation division no more. I think they might have had Fox Box, but even that was starting to go away. So Nickelodeon was like the place for them to go. And of course, they were going through financial upset with the bankruptcy thing in the 90s. And then, they had to sell off their properties. And then Disney bought Marvel and everything. And I remember thinking to myself, this is kind of weird. Why in the world is this show on Nickelodeon if Disney bought Marvel? Well, they didn't want to have to deal with the crap with Fox, who owned the rights to the movies and this and that. And so they said that because of those reasons they canceled it. But I think it was a little bit more than that. It had to be. Ratings were pretty good, but they do tend to dip. And with this being such a very different X-Men series, I don't think everybody fully committed to it. Also, a lot of people didn't like how the X-Men were done dirty. A lot of people didn't like how Wolverine was the main attraction. And so then that Wolverine Origin movie came out, and that just divided the fan base, and to the point where a lot of people was just kind of like, you know what, we're sick and tired of Wolverine. It's just too much Wolverine all the time. And I do believe that movie had a factor in the cancellation, because most of the time when the movie does bad, animation is punished because of it. Superman Returns hurt, what was it, the Legion, a superhero cartoon that came out, because it had Superman in it. The Green Lantern animated series was basically canceled because of the Ryan Reynolds live action, Green Lantern movies. So when Wolverine Origins didn't do too good, I bet it has something to do with the cancellation of this show, but they still won't say. The animation, like I said before, the animation looks good. It looks really flawless, really clean, some colors really pop. The animation takes inspiration from the Astonishing X-Men comic, a little bit of the Ultimate comic with that Master Mold design and Toad, and primarily the live action X-Men movies. You can tell the X-Jet, Cerebro, Wolverine claws and everything. There are things that take inspiration from the movies, but it also takes inspiration from the comics. That's one thing Craig said he wanted, because X-Men Evolution just had their own designs, and he really wanted to go back to the comic look. However, there's a problem with the animation, something that you can kind of spot very early on. there is a odd flatness to the animation, with especially with the character designs. Like, it's weird. Like, there are these big bulky characters, but then there's also this weird layer of flatness within the animation of the character's bulkiness. Like, there isn't that much shading. There are a bunch of vertical lines that give it this slender kind of like almost pencil paper thin look. Like, if you look at the X Jet, which is now once again renamed the Blackbird and everything, it looks just like the one from the movie, but it's like paper thin, very similar to that of the second movie, where it was very, very thin looking and stuff. But in the animation, it is paper thin, and it looks like nobody could fit inside it. Wolverine claws, just like in the movie, comes from his knuckles instead of, like, you know, the back palm of his hand. And they look more like razor knives and everything, just like in the movie, but they have this very paper thin look, which in the movie they had more of a bulkier look, which gave it some depth. Here they're just like as flat could be. I've also noticed this in the bigger characters like Colossus and Juggernaut. They have this odd design to it, especially Juggernaut, because Colossus doesn't last long in the series. Juggernaut, like, he's big and he's bulky, but there's like this thinness to him that makes him look so flat. Same thing with Avalanche and stuff. It's really odd, but you really have to pay attention to see what I'm talking about. And it's the way with the other characters as well, like with their faces and their hair. It's just this, like, say Storm and what's her name? Kitty, they have poofy hair, but it's like this weird, thin, flat kind of look, which I don't like. Another thing with the animation I don't like is, like, okay, in the first 3 episodes, Wolverine claws were like see-through. They were translucent and they had this glossy look to it, which was really weird because his claws are literally metal and not glass. Another thing that's weird with the see-throughness is Rogue's hair. She has that tuft of white hair at the top, but when it drapes over her face, it's completely translucent. It's completely clear and you can see through it. It's a weird animation, like, you know, thing that they did, and I don't know why they made that choice. Wolverine claws go back to looking metal after like the first 3 episodes, but Rogue's hair, you can still see through it. But I do appreciate them having their astonishing X-Men like uniforms because they're so cool looking. Emma Frost's outfit is cool. Wolverine's, even though he needs slightly bigger, like pointy ear things on his mask. But you know, it's because of the way the comic is. They're short in the comic. And then of course there's Cyclops' outfit, which he wears his astonishing X-Men uniform, but he wears a trench coat over it the entire time, so you can't see the beautifulness of the uniform. Why they made this choice, I really can't even tell you. Story-wise, they once again went to like the older comics and stuff. The older comics, a little bit of the Ultimate comics, and of course the live-action X-Men like movies and stuff. Like, they have that whole Rogue and Wolverine kinship type thing like the movies had. The comics kind of had that a little bit, but not as much as like the live action movies and stuff. And like, you know, I just think Toad's design is so gross and nasty. I just want to point that out. But the story of this is really interesting. Of course, it's once again made up for animation. And so Craig wanted like a mystery. Basically, there's something that happens in the present day. There's like this weird thing that's only affecting people with psychic powers. So Jean and the professor, because the show starts off with Rogue and like Wolverine having an argument because he's about to leave once again to do his loner thing, and she doesn't like it because she likes having him there. And so, like, you know, Once again, we have a rogue who doesn't fly. She's just like she is in the live action X-Men show and also in X-Men Evolution. She just takes other people's powers and stuff and uses those. And they do the little vein looking thing like they do in the live action movie, which does not translate very well in animation at all. You can barely see like the veins and stuff. Just like with Wolverine claws, they just don't work in animation like they do in live action. But anyway, so there's something going on with the psychics, and then there's like a huge explosion. And then like the entire X mansion is just like obliterated and everything. Jean and the professor are like missing. And so a year passes. And so with that year, the X-Men have disbanded. They just all went their separate ways. Wolverine just like, rides on the countryside. Beast is the only person who's living down below in the X-Men chamber. I forgot what it's called. Where they like have like Cerebro and all this other stuff, like the hideout place at the bottom of the mansion. Oh, also like with the movies, the Blackbird comes out of the tennis court instead of like the side of a cave. Anyway, Kitty is going to Genosha to live with Magneto and the rest of the mutants, because Magneto has taken over Genosha and stuff, and he's made it like a haven for like mutants, for refugees and stuff. Kurt, Nightcrawler, he's also going to Genosha. Iceman, he's back living with like his parents. I don't know where Forge is at. I think he's living with Beast or some crap like that. By the way, I am offended by this Forge. His outfit has like a Native American vibe to it, but the dude looks white. And Forge is a Native American. And he looks as white could be. And maybe he's a light-skinned Native American, I don't know. But not only did they make him white looking, but they literally made him the comedic relief, who's just basically the engineer of the X-Men. And he's made to look like the butt of the series, where they always make fun of him and bad stuff always happens to him. I am utterly disgusted by this. It's that MCU Marvel baby Disney humor. It wasn't even to the point where Marvel humor was that bad, but they're trying to capitalize on the Iron Man movie and stuff with the humor and stuff. It is just embarrassing how they did Forge, and I cannot believe it and stuff. And so, like, let's see, Storm went to Africa. Oh, Storm went back to Africa. Gee, that don't sound racist. And Cyclops is basically living in a Roach Motel because he is utterly devastated that his father figure is gone and his girlfriend is gone. And Colossus went back to Russia, which doesn't sound as bad as Storm going back to Africa, because Storm is black. And so after this, we don't see Colossus no more. We only see him in that first episode, and that is it. And he's barely in the first episode. He was supposed to get reintroduced in the second season, and they did get a second season until they decided to reverse that renewal and cancel the show. And so, like, a year's passed, and the X-Men just said, screw it. And I'm just kind of like, really? Y'all just give up like that? Like, the humans are literally hunting down mutants, and y'all just give up. Like, that's just embarrassing all on its own. And they're being hunted down by the MRD, which is the Mutant Response Division. And I think they're in the comics, I think. And just like any other mutant hunters, they call mutants muties. But what's really weird is that the mutants give them a racial slur name too, calling them the Martys and stuff. First time I've ever heard mutants give humans racial slurs. So this is a very different series. And so with the first 3 episodes, it's basically all about Wolverine. He's out camping. He sees a family. One of the family members is a mutant, and they get captured by the MRD. So he wants to rescue them, but he makes a mess out of everything. And so he goes back to the X mansion because he knows Beast lives there. So he needs some backup. So Beast is going to help out. Man, Beast is literally made to be comedic relief. The man who's supposed to be very smart in medical stuff, the man who does like philosophy and everything, reciting poems and everything, and all this literature, he's literally made to be comedic relief. And it's embarrassing. I don't like how they treat the X-Men in this series. And so eventually they do save, like, that family and stuff. But then after that, Wolverine's all like, we're gonna restart the X-Men up. So, with Forge's help and everything, they start looking for everybody. And so they go to Bobby's parents' house, they go grab Bobby. They head out to Genosha while Kitty is on a boat and about to head out there, and they get her. Who else? Then they go and get Cyclops. But the thing with him is he doesn't want to be bothered with nobody. And when Wolverine tries to talk to him, he just basically blasts Wolverine. Emma Frost shows up, which is really interesting. She's all like, you need somebody to work Cerebro. She's a psychic, blah, 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 blah. Wolverine doesn't want her on the team originally because she's part of, like, the inner circle. But, that disbanded, supposedly. And so, like, he later lets her join the group. Cyclops got out of his funk and decided to join as well. He kind of gives like Emma kind of like a look, because those two had a thing in the comics, but it doesn't really go that far. And so, like, after she did her psychic thing, she realizes that the professor is on Genosha. So the X-Men go on over to Genosha, but the Blackbird isn't ready, so Forge is fixing their eyes in the air. As they go to like Genosha and everything, they're sneaking around looking for stuff. Cyclops is just being a butthead and blasting everything. And so eventually Magneto senses them, especially Wolverine, and he captures all the X-Men in a very cool fashion. And he tells them, look, man, I didn't capture the professor. He just showed up on like, my beach shore and everything. And he took him in. He's in a coma. He tells the X-Men, you're very welcome to join Genosha, this and that. And so, like, they decline and, they head back to, like, the X Mansion, which is now being rebuilt by Angel and everything. Angel has become a vigilante, is no longer an X-Men. I think I'll mention about him. And so, while down in, like, the X Chamber, which I'm just going to call it because I don't know what else to call it, the professor talks to the X-Men in a psychic like thing, and he tells them plain and simple, he has woken up, but he's woken up 20 years in the future, and he's unable to wake up any other time before then, and the world has went to Hades and everything. Basically, the entire like world is a wasteland, and Sentinels rule. Because the Sentinels aren't a thing yet, they're starting to be. And so he tells them, something caused the explosion, something caused like, the registration for mutants, this and that. A war broke out between humans and like, mutants, and they have to prevent all this bad stuff from happening. So it's a cool thing. They operate in the present and they operate 20 years in the future. Oops, not throwing my camera. And so like, so that's like a really cool premise and everything. And I really like how they did that. And so, but then the professor does something that pisses off Cyclops. He basically says Wolverine's in charge of the X-Men instead of Cyclops. This pisses off Cyclops to the point where he's going to leave, but decided to stay. And so then we get our nice little adventures for a 26 episode arc. Now, I am baffled, and I mean baffled, that the professor picked Wolverine to be the leader of the X-Men. I forgot Rogue. Rogue has joined the Brotherhood of Mutants. She just wants to have fun and do destructive stuff. Anyway, but I'm very shocked that Wolverine was the leader of the X-Men and Cyclops was not. But since Cyclops was in a bad state of mind, the professor saw it as him not being able to lead. This is a huge piss in the face to Cyclops and his fans, because even though Cyclops will go off the cliff at times, he always climbs up the cliff and gets his feet back on land. He is the definitive leader of the X-Men, and it is shocking that he's been treated like he's basically the Wolverine of this series, who's just angry all the time and blasting crap, while Wolverine is the more level-headed person. And not only did they do a piss in the face of Cyclops, but they did a piss in the face of Storm. Storm, like I said before, has went back to Africa. There's an episode dedicated to her. Oh, by the way, a lot of these X-Men don't even get their solo episodes like in the original series, or even X-Men Evolution. It's basically just the Wolverine show. And so in the solo Storm episode, she's in Africa, but it's reported by the professor 20 years in the future, she destroys Africa. And so they have to prevent her from destroying it. Why does she destroy it? Because of the Shadow King. He takes over her mind. And he makes her think that all of Africa is burning, so she does all the weather stuff she can to put out the fire. So with the help of Emma Frost and everything, they help stop her and stuff. And she joins the X-Men, but she's not even second in command like she normally is. When Cyclops is indisposed, Storm, who is second in command, takes over as leader. She doesn't even do that in the series. Who is second in command? Beast. And Beast barely does anything in the series, and he's barely shown in the series, and he doesn't even have a solo episode. So right from the start, this whole, it had to be in the studio that wanted a Wolverine to be the center focus because of the Hugh Jackman thing. Craig and them should have done a better job with the character development of this series, which they did not do whatsoever. And it is quite baffling. So not only is Storm not second in command, but she's pretty much sidelined for the rest of the series. She doesn't get another solo episode, and she's barely ever featured. Whenever she is featured, she's featured in the background, just helping out the X-Men. It is a crying shame. And then they try to do this crap where her and Angel are a couple, and so they try to give her some more screen time when he's going through his solo arc and everything. Not only that, but Kitty Pryde is just a smart mouth little teenager and stuff who's there for comedic relief. Iceman, who's supposed to be one of the most powerful mutants there is just a punk. Not a punk as in he's a jerk, but actually he is a jerk in this series because he's comedic relief and everything. But he's not even that powerful. He's always getting his butt kicked. Forge, like I said, is just a smart bumbling idiot who's there to be the butt of everybody's joke. Rogue is on her own side mission. You think she's a villain throughout the entire series because she's with the Brotherhood doing bad stuff, but when she absorbed the memories of Toad, she realizes the Brotherhood is working for Magneto and they're gonna plan something big that help leads to the war of the mutants and the humans. I'll get into Emma Frost later. And so, they go on all these side missions, kinda. The X-Men barely go on any side missions. They stopped Nitro. And I remember when that Nitro episode came out, boy, the fan base exploded. Because they love themselves some Nitro. Because I think he's the one who started the Marvel Civil War and everything. When he basically just went berserk and everything. And so, that was a really cool episode. It features the Brotherhood. They have to try to contain him. And Wolverine realizes that, look, man, the best thing for him to do is to be with the MRD and be in, a stasis unit. Not only that, but there were some weird, questionable choices they made in this series, like the mutant collars. It's not the humans that make them. It's the X-Men that make them, because they realize there are some X-Men that powers are so strong and they need a way to contain them, so they created the X-Men collars, which got in the hands of the humans because the humans hired Gambit of all people to steal it. There's a really cool Gambit episode. There's two actually, but the first one's the best one. He's partnered with Wolverine because Wolverine hires him to re-steal it from the people that wanted him to steal it from the X-Men. And so it's basically Remy LeBeau is really cool. I like the sound of his voice. They went back to the classic like outfit that he wears and stuff. They gave him the purple like glowing effect like in the comics and stuff. And this Gambit is very resourceful. He just won't use cards. He'll use whatever's around him. And so him and Wolverine take out a proto Sentinel type. The Sentinels originally started off as scorpions for some bizarre reason. It's a really cool action scene, and they get the little collar thing back, but not before it's examined by like the humans, and they use it in the future. And so basically, other than that, it's just a bunch of Wolverine episodes. Pointless Wolverine episodes. There's a Hulk versus Wolverine episode that's like the sequel to the animated movie. The Wendigo shows up and everything. There's another Wolverine Center episode where it's like one of those Weapon X type episodes and stuff. And so then there's one with him and the Silver Samurai, I think it is his name. And I'm just kind of like, dude, why are you giving us all these Wolverine filler type episodes that have absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the story? And that's because Wolverine is supposed to be the center of the show. Not only is he leading the X-Men in somewhat of a bad way, but also he's getting all these solo episodes that's drowning out the series. And so, like, Beast doesn't get a solo episode, Kitty doesn't get one, Bobby doesn't get one, Storm only gets one, Cyclops gets about like 2. The first one is pretty cool because Cyclops is basically looking for Jean and he thinks Sinister has her. So he goes rogue and just starts blasting the crap out of all of like Sinister's people. Basically, he is attacking them first. And it's to the point where he realizes that what's his name doesn't have her. So when the X-Men show up to save the day, Wolverine reprimands him as all like, you gonna be part of the team and you ain't doing this solo mess and blah, 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 blah. It's just another piss in the face of Cyclops. Forge doesn't get no solo episodes. Angel gets a really cool one where basically it's like, he's doing this vigilante thing to save mutants. And like he's helping out on the side, but then like an accident happens and he loses his wings. Well, they get broken and his father decides, you know what, just chop them off. This is a very devastating and powerful episode, very emotional, one of the best episodes in the entire series because it's not having to do with Wolverine. And so like basically Sinister gives him like an option. Look, man, I can restore your wings and everything. And what he does, he turns him into Archangel. And Apocalypse doesn't do it, but he does it. And so after that, he's brainwashed and like he's attacking like the X-Men. He's attacking his father and all this other cool stuff. And so we get some more Wolverine episodes. Basically, it's Agent Zero, a Maverick and everything, his daughter. There's a subplot where him and Mystique were lovers back in the day, and she's working for Magneto and everything. And then there is Nightcrawler, who gets some really cool episodes. Nightcrawler became my favorite X-Men because of this series. Nightcrawler is on a boat with other mutants heading to Genosha when he's attacked by a bunch of like space pirates and stuff. Mojo and like the Mojo verse or whatever you call it. Basically, he wants mutants to fight in his arenas for like the television and stuff like that. Which we get a really awesome scene of like Nightcrawler getting all these mutants with really crappy powers and having them fix like the ship and rescue their people and all this other stuff. He should have been the leader of the X-Men if Cyclops wasn't, because he really showed great leadership qualities. This is by far the best Nightcrawler I've ever seen, period. Even his vamping is really cool. So basically, the X-Men come to save the day, but the day's already been saved by Nightcrawler and his peeps. They go on over to Genosha, and he doesn't want to join the X-Men. While over in Genosha, he starts to fall in love with Scarlet Witch, because that's what happens in the comics. And so Scarlet Witch is like the right hand woman of Magneto. And so after living there, he's thinking, oh wow, this really is paradise. Until he starts to see it isn't. Basically, if you commit any kind of crime in Genosha, you get taken down below and put in like prison cells and stuff. Nightcrawler doesn't think this is cool because, you know, Magneto literally says he would never be like the humans and put people in cages, but then he does. So when he starts to see more fishy stuff starting to go on, he realizes he needs to contact the X-Men. So in a really cool way, he bamps all the way from Genosha back to like the X mansion, but he can only go a certain amount of feet. So it's days he's constantly doing this while being pursued by like, you know, Magneto's people. And he's finally able to make it to like the mansion where he tries to signal people, but Mystique captures him and stuff. Now there's no relation to Mystique and Nightcrawler in this series because they're trying to be like the movies and stuff. Even the movies did like a piss poor job on that. And so they capture him and they put him in a cage. And so eventually he does get out and he makes it back to the X-Men. He tells them like all this stuff and stuff. And in another solo Nightcrawler episode, he's with Scarlet Witch and Mojo wants revenge on him and everything. And then they cram Wolverine into it. Like Wolverine just shows up out of like nowhere. And it's like, oh great, another Wolverine episode. Magneto in this, he basically wants peace, you know, with like his mutant people living on Genosha. But he always has a trick up his sleeve. He has the Brotherhood creating like havoc throughout the city, which causes the humans to hate on mutants more because he wants a war started. And he wants to destroy humans like always and stuff. But he's doing it in a very sneaky way. He's trying to piss off Senator Kelly the best way he can. Wanda is his right-hand woman, and he hates Pietro, period. He thinks Pietro is just like a screw-up, which is really different from that of X-Men Evolution, where it was like the complete opposite. Lorna is in this, and they have her as Magneto's daughter. In the comics, she was, then she wasn't. I don't know what her status is now. But she's like the youngest, and he tries to shield her from like everything. So basically, she has no idea what's going on in Genosha, and she has no idea what's going on and like outside of Genosha and stuff. And so, you know, this is when, like, you know, Rogue knows of the plan and she tells, like, the X-Men, but Wolverine doesn't really trust her at first and he ties her up. The problem with Wolverine, just like in the comics and whatever, he has trust issues. And because of that, a lot of bad stuff happens to where, like, you know, bad stuff happens in the future. It's mostly a lot of Wolverine's fault because he just doesn't trust people. And so, like, Gambit is sent to, like, Genosha to steal the helmet of Magneto. He does it, but then he pretends to fall in love with Lorna to trick her. She wants to leave Genosha and explore the world. And so he causes like the power grid to like blow up and everything. And basically he tells her, look, man, I'm not as good as you think because I lied and I still stole the helmet and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, all this other crap and, you know, and stuff like that. And so after that, we don't see Gambit no more. And it's really weird that Gambit is a true villain with no redeeming quality like he was in X-Men Evolution. And so basically, like, you know, after the professor finds out, you know, so time is changing and everything, and with the help of the X-Men. And so the professor realizes there's still a war that's happening between like the humans and like the mutants. So he gets both of like Magneto and Senator Kelly, and he shows them what the future looks like. So Senator Kelly's like, yo, man, I'm done. Like, I'm done hating on these mutants and everything like that. Magneto has different plans though. Especially, like, he still wants that war to happen. He has Mystique pretend to be Kelly to send the Sentinels to, like, Genosha and blow it up. And he literally sent the Sentinels to Genosha to blow his own people up just so it can start, like, a war. Of course, this backfires and everything. He reprograms a bunch of, like, Sentinels and everything. And basically, he's in more than he asked for because, yeah, it gets so bad that where Lorna and Wanda like turn on him and everything like that. But what exactly is going on 20 years in the future, you might be wondering? Well, the professors with a bunch of refugees and everything, and they form a new form of X-Men. It's basically Bishop, a bald-headed Bishop, just like in the Ultimate comic books. It's Morrow, who was supposed to be, that's who, this is like, Morrow is the reason why Spike was created in X-Men Evolution, other than diversity. She was there to be like, the spiky one and everything, but they decided to create Spike. So she's there, Bishop's there. Domino, who's part of the Brotherhood in the past, she's there. Berserker's there, Helen's there, and I think somebody else, Vanisher, later shows up. So he has this rag team of like X-Men from like the future and stuff. And they try to prevent a lot of things that are happening. Like they break some of the mutants out. They find out about like Master Mode. So they tell Wolverine all of them about like the Sentinel Project and Master Mode. Master Mode is just literally a giant computer back in the past. Wolverine only goes with like Kitty and Forge to take down like the Sentinel factory and everything. And these stealth type outfits that also resemble other comic book costumes, and basically just to sell toys. And Wolverine's the idiot because he thinks, oh, I can do it all by myself and everything. When he ends up getting captured, they scan like, his body, and they also scan other captured mutants. So the Sentinels in the future are very advanced. You have your typical giant sized Sentinels, but then you have like these animal looking versions that have like can mimic the powers of like mutants. So they have like Wolverine claws and his healing ability, and they're like super Sentinels and everything. They're kind of like Nimrod, but they don't look like him, and all this other stuff. And so he's like, oh man, I screwed up. Like, Kitty was right. We should have just blasted the whole thing. But I hate how they made Wolverine like the leader. And so they go back to destroy Master Mode, and they do. Only problem is he linked up to like another or she, I should say, because this Master Mode's female, like in the whatchamacallit comic, the Ultimate one and stuff. And so she links up to like a Sentinel and everything and scurries away. And so she rebuilds herself in the future, and there's Sentinels everywhere. I do love how the future looks. It's this pinkish reddish sky to show that everything's screwed up and everything, and it's just like really awesome. And so, like, while Professor's there in the future, they go to like the Badlands and they find Lorna. She doesn't want to help out, talking about how like all of Genosha burnt on fire and everything. And so they assumed that it was part of the war with like the humans and everything, but it was actually something else. And so like, so, they prevent like the helmet from being stolen. This is when he talks to Kelly and Magneto and all this other stuff. But there's a problem in the future. The professor is being hunted down by Master Mode because she needs his psychic ability. At some point in time, okay, see, all the refugees are wearing like prison uniforms, right? And all of a sudden, Bishop, in a couple episodes later on, is wearing his traditional X-Men uniform. And it's like, dude, where'd you find that at? And everybody else is still wearing rags and prison uniforms. It's just a weird animation choice they decided to do. So anyway, Morrow, because Lorna reassembled like a Sentinel, and this became Rover. Rover's from the comics. And so Morrow decides to befriend Rover and treat him like a pet. So when they want to use him to infiltrate like the Sentinel factory and this and that, she ain't having it, and she literally betrays the X-Men and tells the Sentinels where they can find Professor X, which of course they capture him and stuff. And at some point in time, Future Wolverine got captured too. Apparently, Future Wolverine's the one who trained Bishop and everybody else. But we don't get to see him just yet. And so then we get to like the biggest revelation of them all in the series. Jean's alive. She's in the hospital and she has amnesia. And so at some point in time, Emma and Cyclops are able to find her and rescue her from that of Archangel because Sinister wanted her for her DNA. And of course, he captures Jean and he captures Cyclops and he takes their DNA. And so basically, Eventually she will get her memories back, and she talks to the professor, and then all of a sudden everybody is knocked out with a psychic blast. Who is it? Emma Frost and the Inner Circle. Basically, Emma Frost was a mole this entire time, a double agent, working for, like, the Inner Circle. Why? Because they want the Phoenix Force. So the Phoenix Force is still that alien entity, but basically what it does, it travels the universe and it looks for a psychic. There it goes in their body at a young age where it grows and manifests as the person is growing and manifesting as well. So it picked Jean many years ago when she was a kid. They kind of tried to do that whole live X-Men thing by saying the Phoenix Force is a part of Jean, and it's her split personality and stuff like that, while also trying to incorporate the comic aspect from it. It works. It works a whole lot better than a live action X-Men movie. Basically, the Phoenix Force is just a destructive force that when it does manifest into an adult, it just wants to destroy everything. And so apparently this is what caused that fire on Genosha. It was Jean and the Phoenix Force and everything. And that's what also leveled most of like the world. It was Jean who burnt the world to send there with the Phoenix Force and everything. The professor, he's put psychic like barriers in her mind to keep it like at bay and everything. We get a really cool flashback episode of like First Class X-Men with Beast with no fur, Angel, a teeny tiny Iceman, Cyclops as a teenager, and Jean as a teen, as Magneto's trying to capture Jean and everything because he wants her power. The Cyclops from X-Men Evolution voices teenage Cyclops, so that's really cool. And so basically, it was Emma all along. Oh, it was Emma all along. So basically, her and her cuckoos, which are like clone versions of her, they thought they could tame Jean's mind and everything. And so when they tried to like capture Jean and shut her powers off and everything, she realized this and she fought back. The Phoenix Force came out and it blew up the X Mansion. So it was Jean that blew up the X Mansion. After that explosion, Emma took the professor's body and put it on Genosha, and I think she took Jean's body and put it in like a hospital or something like that, so that the X-Men wouldn't be able to find her, because they know Cyclops would just go looking for her and all this other crap. Because they needed a reason for like Emma to join the team and for them to trust her and everything. So when she found the professor's body, which she knew all along where it was at, and so like, stuff like that. And so what they want is once again the Phoenix Force from Jean's body. By this time, Emma has turned a new leaf and doesn't really want to do the things that she wanted to do in the past, and realizing that the Phoenix Force is too strong. But in a way, she fights with the Inner Circle people, and they basically take her hostage, and they want the Cuckoos to extract that of the Phoenix Force, which they do, but they can't control it. And we finally get to see the red and gold version of the Phoenix costume, ×3. And so because of this, Wolverine doesn't trust Emma no more and this and that. And so, before I end this, let me just say, like, they gave Wolverine smell-o-vision. You know how Wolverine can smell things and he knows when people are around, when they used to be and this and that? Now they have it that when he smells stuff, he can see gas forms of like people's bodies doing whatever it is they did in the past. It's weird. It's interesting and different, but it's just weird. Anyway, so basically, because of the humans versus the mutants, this is now happening. Oh, by the way, the intro is amazing. It's basically the last episode, like a montage of it and stuff. And so we get to see, like, the MRDs and the mutants fight each other with the Sentinels and this and that. And so, like, the Cuckoos are trying to, like, eliminate, like, the Sentinels and everything. But like I said before, the Phoenix Force is too strong. Now, realizing all what has happened in the future and everything, because the X-Men has told the professor, they're still trying to fight everything, like the Sentinels in the future. So it's a battle between two different, like, time periods, which is really cool. And so the professor tells, what is it? Oh, no, I remember. The professor finally gets to meet old Wolverine, which he's not that old. He still looks young. He just has longer, shaggier hair. And he tells the professor the reason why all this happened is because I didn't trust Emma. She tried to warn me. She tried to tell me about the cuckoos and all this, and I didn't want to hear it. And I left her there to rot. And so I tried to handle everything by myself with the X-Men, and everything failed. The Master Mode took over the world, and blah, 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 blah. And the cuckoos burnt down, or the Phoenix Force burnt down like the Earth and everything like that. So the professor, he tells younger Wolverine all this. So Wolverine finally trusts Emma and everything. He frees her. And as so the X-Men are trying to fight like the cuckoos and the Phoenix Force. They've now stopped fighting the Sentinels because they're kind of taking out. Magneto realizes, oh crap, dude, what the heck did I do? And so, like, the Phoenix Force has now left the cuckoos, and without a host, it's just going berserk. And so it wants Jean back. And so Jean's all like, you want me? Come get me, because she's going to try to contain it. And so Cyclops doesn't want this to happen, because he finally just got Jean back. So Emma makes the hugest sacrifice of them all. She allows the Phoenix Force to go inside her, and she puts on her diamond form to try to contain it. And so it's too much for her to handle, and it just blows her up. So she literally dies on screen as tons of little diamonds are falling out the sky. But now the X-Men have like avoided catastrophe and everything. The war between humans and mutants is no longer. Magneto no longer is in charge of Genosha because his kids kicked him out. The Sentinel Project is like done, and the Phoenix Force has been destroyed now and everything. And so you think everything's going to be great in the future, right? Nope. The professor is in the future. The X mansion is still there. Everything's back to normal, except for somebody else is in control of the world, and that is Apocalypse. And Apocalypse by his side is Mr. Sinister and a Cyclops from the Age of Apocalypse Cyclops and everything. This was nuts. And I was like, oh man, I can't wait for a second season, because they were supposed to get a second season. And of course, second season never happened because they got canceled and stuff. And also in the show, if they were going to get a second season, they were going to introduce Jubilee, Deadpool, X-23, an older version and stuff. They were going to reintroduce Cyclops and everything. No, not Cyclops, but Colossus and everything. So it was going to be a big season. Oh, and Magic's Colossus' sister was supposed to be in there. So it was going to be nuts, especially with the whole Age of Apocalypse storyline and everything. And we were going to see how the professor fit into like the future and stuff like that, and how the X-Men of the past were going to stop it. But sadly now we will never know, because the show got canceled and stuff. And X-23 actually did appear in the series. She appeared as a baby in a flashback, and she appeared as a little girl. And Wolverine's like, what is she? And everything, but it's never explained. And then in the future, there are 3 versions of her, 3 clone versions that help out Wolverine. Basically, the 3 X-23s and Wolverine are all like trying to destroy as much as Master Mode Sentinels as they can, and then they later help out with the future X-Men and everything, and the professor. So, needless to say, this was a very ambitious series and a huge whodunit type thing. It was a good series, but it was flawed from the beginning, making Wolverine the leader, disbanding the X-Men, not giving Cyclops and Storm their due, making Cyclops the way he was, the way he couldn't really get himself back on track, not giving none of the other X-Men any character development or storylines was quite a shame. Oh, by the way, Rogue storyline. So like I said before, she infiltrated the Brotherhood because she knew they were doing something bad. So she tried to tell the X-Men. The X-Men didn't want to listen. And then when it finally happened, they listened to her. And she kind of rejoined the X-Men back, living in the X-Mansion, but not being part of the X-Men. Not until the finale, where she finally rejoins and stuff. But needless to say, nobody really got their dues in this. Nobody really got their good character development. Nobody really got their good solo episodes, except for like a few. Nightcrawler and Angel were still the best. But then once Nightcrawler rejoined the X-Men, he was just kind of a nobody after that. He was just a side character. And it's sad that the X-Men was treated as side characters to that of Wolverine. There was too many Wolverine-centered episodes. There was too many Wolverine being crammed into other people's storylines and stuff. And eventually, this series probably just was never, ever truly going to have the high ratings of the other X-Men series and stuff. I still think there's more to the cancellation other than Disney buying Marvel, because people love the X-Men, not just Wolverine. They want to see the X-Men have their due, and this show never gave them that. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.